The invasion begins. The serene landscape of Aurora Colony was shattered by the deafening roar of alien warships descending from the blood-red sky. Aurora's twin moons, once symbols of peace, were now obscured by the looming shadows of the shock hunter-killer robots. These machines, sent by the Xenos to annihilate humanity's outpost, were designed for one purpose: to eradicate all life. Corporal Jim Wallace, a seasoned Marine, stood resolute amidst the chaos, his heart pounding as the first wave of the mechanical invaders breached the colony's defenses. His sharp eyes scanned the horizon, where countless metallic figures marched in perfect synchronization, their weapons glinting ominously in the dim light. The Xenos had underestimated humanity, thinking their machines would easily crush the human spirit. But they were wrong. "On your feet, Marines." Jim's voice cut through the cacophony of destruction, rallying Echo Squad. He grabbed his rifle, its familiar weight a comforting reminder of countless battles fought and won. Clankers inbound, and they aren't here for tea. The Marines responded with military precision, their power suits humming to life as they prepared for the onslaught. They moved as one, each soldier's movements a testament to years of rigorous training and unyielding discipline. The battle that followed was brutal, a desperate struggle for survival against an overwhelming force. Laser fire crisscrossed the dust-choked streets, turning the once peaceful colony into a hellish war zone. Jim led his squad through the concrete maze, ducking behind the remnants of a burnt hover car as enemy fire whizzed past his head. "Rogers, left flank. McKenna, high ground. Cover us." Jim barked, his commands met with immediate action. Echo Squad operated like a well-oiled machine, their synergy a product of countless missions together. They fought fiercely, severing robotic limbs and blasting circuits with deadly accuracy. But for every robot they destroyed, 10 more emerged from the smoke, relentless in their advance. "We can't keep this up," Rogers shouted over the din of battle, his voice tinged with desperation. "We're outnumbered." Jim knew he was right. The enemy's numbers were overwhelming, and the ammunition was running low. The tide of battle was turning against them. With grim determination, Jim signaled for a retreat, leading his squad back to their makeshift fortress, a fortified building that had become their last bastion of hope. As the gates slammed shut behind them, the relentless pounding of the robots on the walls echoed through the stronghold. The situation was dire, and Jim knew that bullets alone wouldn't win this fight. "We need a bot alive," Jim said, his voice cutting through the despair that hung in the air. "We take one down intact, and maybe we can find a way to turn the tide." His words were met with a mixture of confusion and resolve. It was a risky plan, but it was their only shot at survival. The squad quickly devised a strategy, using an electromagnetic trap to disable one of the machines without destroying it. After a tense and dangerous operation, they succeeded in capturing a robot, its massive frame twitching as the current surged through it. Jim inspected the dormant machine, sweat beading on his forehead. "Secure it," he ordered. "Get the eggheads here now. We've got work to do." The atmosphere was tense, the weight of their task heavy on everyone's shoulders. But there was no time for fear or doubt. The survival of humanity depended on what they could learn from this machine. A desperate gamble. The captured robot was brought to the colony's makeshift laboratory, where the best minds among the survivors gathered to study it. Hannah, the lead engineer, was already hard at work, her hands moving with a surgeon's precision as she dissected the machine's inner workings. The lab was a hive of activity, with scientists and engineers working frantically, their faces etched with determination and fatigue. Jim stood nearby, watching the proceedings with a mix of hope and anxiety. The battle outside raged on, the stronghold walls shaking with the impact of the relentless assault. But in this room, a new kind of battle was being fought, a battle of intellect and ingenuity against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. Hannah's eyes gleamed with a fierce light as she delved deeper into the robot's systems. "Decentralized networks," she muttered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the equipment. "No direct control, but I think I can hack it. Jim's heart leaped at her words. If they could find a way to take control of the enemy's machines, they might have a chance. How long will it take? He asked, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Not long, Hannah replied, her fingers flying over the console. But it's risky. If we fail, they'll know we're onto them, and they'll tighten security. We don't have a choice, Jim said firmly. Do it. Hours passed in tense silence, the only sounds the soft whir of machinery and the distant rumble of battle. Sweat dripped from Hannah's brow as she worked, her focus unbroken. Jim watched her, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. Every second counted, and the lives of his squad, and possibly all of humanity, depended on the success of this desperate gamble. Finally, Hannah looked up, her face pale but triumphant. I've done it, she said, her voice trembling with exhaustion. We can infiltrate their network, but we'll need to get close to the source, their mothership. Jim's heart sank. The Shock mothership was a colossal behemoth, a floating fortress that dwarfed everything in its path. Infiltrating it would be a suicide mission, but if it meant saving Earth, there was no other option. We need to disable their army at the source, Jim said, his voice grim. It's suicide, but if it saves Earth, who's with me? The room fell silent, the gravity of the situation sinking in. But one by one, hands rose in defiance, soldiers stepping forward to join Jim on what could be their final mission. They were humanity's last hope, and they would not back down. Then let's get to work, Jim said, his voice filled with determination. We've got a planet to save. Into the belly of the beast. The journey to the Shock mothership was fraught with danger. Jim and his team, now reduced to a small group of elite soldiers, slipped through the darkness in a stolen shuttle, its stealth systems barely masking their approach. The massive alien vessel loomed ahead, its shadow swallowing the stars. The tension in the cabin was palpable, each soldier silently preparing for what lay ahead. Got the jammer ready? Jim asked, his voice a low whisper as they neared the mothership. McKenna, the squad's tech specialist, nodded, her fingers deftly adjusting the device strapped to her wrist. Ready. One wrong move, though, and we're toast. Jim's grip tightened on his rifle as the shuttle docked with the alien ship. The airlock hissed open, and the team moved swiftly, their boots making no sound on the cold metal floor. The corridors were dimly lit, alien glyphs glowing faintly on the walls, casting eerie shadows. Stay sharp, Jim murmured, leading the way. Every corner could hide an ambush, and the Shock were known for their brutal efficiency in combat. They moved through the twisting corridors, navigating the labyrinthine interior of the mothership. But despite their best efforts, disaster struck. A shrieking alarm suddenly pierced the silence, blaring through the halls as their cover was blown. Move, Jim shouted, his voice barely audible over the deafening wail. The team broke into a sprint, their hearts pounding as they fled down the corridors, enemy signals now awake and converging on their location. Blaster fire erupted, scorching the walls and filling the air with the acrid smell of burning metal. The Shock soldiers, bred for war, were relentless in their pursuit. Energy bolts crisscrossed the hallway, forcing the team to dive for cover. Rogers fired his pulse rifle, dropping an alien guard, while Ellis threw up a shield to protect them from the onslaught. We can't hold them off forever, McKenna yelled, her voice strained as she frantically worked to jam the enemy's communications. We need to reach the mainframe now. Jim knew their time was running out. The team fought with everything they had, every step forward a battle against overwhelming odds. Finally, they reached the mainframe room, the door looming ahead like a gate to salvation. Inside, a nest of alien computers awaited them, their whispering data streams a stark contrast to the violence outside. Hannah rushed to the controls, her hands flying over the floating interfaces with supernatural intuition. "Cover me," she shouted as she began the upload. Jim stood guard at the door, his rifle barking desperately as the enemy pounded at the walls. The The door buckled under the force of the assault, but Jim held his ground, fueled by sheer willpower. The room was a maelstrom of noise and chaos, but amidst it all, Hannah's voice rang out. "I'm in. Give me a few minutes." Minutes felt like hours as the team fought off wave after wave of enemies. Just when it seemed all hope was lost, Hannah's voice cut through the din. "Done. Move out," Jim ordered, the team barely managing to escape as the door finally gave way. They raced through the corridors, retracing their steps back to the shuttle, the enemy hot on their heels. As the shuttle doors slammed shut behind them, Jim allowed himself a brief moment of relief. They had done it. They had planted the seed of destruction within the heart of the enemy's forces. But the battle was far from over. They still had to escape and get back to Earth, where the fate of humanity hung in the balance. The Great Escape. The shuttle's engines roared to life as it blasted away from the shock mothership, tearing through the void of space. Inside, Jim and his team were tense, their eyes glued to the monitors displaying the pursuing enemy fighters. Red dots swarmed on the radar, each one a harbinger of death. "They're on us," Rogers called out, gripping his seat tightly as the shuttle swerved to avoid enemy fire. The hull shook violently, the impact of laser blasts rattling the ship. The Shark were relentless, their advanced fighters closing the distance with terrifying speed. Jim's mind raced. They needed to reach the safety of their own fleet, but the enemy's firepower was overwhelming. "McKenna, can you boost our shields? We won't make it to Earth at this rate." McKenna's fingers danced over the controls, her face pale but focused. "I'll reroute power from the weapons to the shields, but that means we'll be sitting ducks." "Do it," Jim barked. They had no choice. Survival was their only priority now. The shuttle's shields flared to life, absorbing the brunt of the incoming attacks. But with no way to fight back, they were a defenseless target, and the Shark fighters pressed their advantage. Explosions rocked the shuttle as more impacts hit, each one closer to critical systems. "We're not going to make it," Ellis shouted, his voice filled with fear. "Hold together, damn it," Jim yelled, trying to keep his team focused. But even he knew they were on borrowed time. His mind flashed to Earth, the people they had sworn to protect, the millions who had placed their hope in the success of this mission. Just as despair began to set in, the radar pinged with new signals, friendly ones. "Reinforcements incoming," Rogers cried out, hope surging in his voice. From the blackness of space, Earth's fleet emerged, a wall of ships that glimmered like a beacon of hope. The massive dreadnoughts fired their weapons, creating a dazzling light show of destruction as they tore into the Shark forces. The enemy fighters broke off their pursuit, scattering in the face of the sudden onslaught. "Command, this is Echo Team. We need immediate extraction," Jim called into the comms, his voice urgent. "Copy that, Echo Team. We've got you covered," came the calm, confident voice of Admiral Torres. "Prepare for docking." As the shuttle limped toward the flagship, the relief among the crew was palpable. They had escaped, but only just. The shuttle docked with the Earth Fleet's command ship, and the battered team was rushed to the briefing room where the High Command awaited. Jim, bruised and exhausted, stood at attention as Admiral Torres and the others gathered around a massive holographic display. The image of the Shark mothership dominated the room, a constant reminder of the threat they had just faced. "We've planted the virus," Jim reported, his voice steady despite the weight of the mission. "But they're going to know something's up soon." Admiral Torres nodded, her expression unreadable. "We've already started seeing the effects. The Shark ground forces are malfunctioning, but it's only a matter of time before they counteract it." "What's the next move?" Jim asked, his gaze unwavering. "We're taking the fight to them," Torres replied, her tone decisive. "We've got one chance to strike at the heart of their operations. If we can cripple their command structure before they recover, we might just save Earth." Jim felt a surge of pride. They had fought against impossible odds and come out alive, but the battle was far from over. Now, With the might of the Earth fleet behind them, they had a chance to turn the tide. "Admiral," Hannah interrupted, her voice filled with urgency. "The virus we planted, it's designed to spread. If we can get close enough to their network hub, we could potentially take out their entire fleet." Tora's eyes narrowed as she considered the possibility. "And how do you propose we do that?" Hannah hesitated for a moment before responding. "We need to get one of our ships inside their defensive perimeter. It'll be risky, but if we can deliver the virus directly, it could end the war in a single strike." The room fell silent as the implications of her plans sunk in. It was a bold move, one that could either save or doom humanity. Jim spoke up, his voice filled with resolve. "I'll lead the mission. We've come this far. We're not backing down now." Torres met his gaze, the weight of her command reflected in her eyes. "You've already done more than enough, Corporal. But if you're willing to see this through, then we'll give you everything you need." The team exchanged glances, each one silently reaffirming their commitment. They had come too far to turn back now. The mission was clear: infiltrate the enemy fleet, deliver the virus, and end the war. "Let's finish this," Jim said, his voice echoing with the determination of every soldier who had fought and died for humanity's survival. The final assault. The Earth fleet moved as one, cutting through the void of space with a deadly grace. Jim and his team were aboard the Valkyrie, a sleek, heavily armed destroyer that had been modified for their mission. Its engines hummed with barely restrained power, ready to unleash hell upon the enemy. The Shark fleet loomed ahead, an impenetrable wall of metal and firepower. But thanks to the virus they had planted, cracks were beginning to show. Ships drifted off course, their systems glitching and malfunctioning. It was a small advantage, but one they desperately needed. "All ships, this is Admiral Torres," the command crackled through the comms. "We are go for the assault. Valkyrie, you have the green light." Jim's hands clenched into fists as the ship rocketed toward the heart of the Shark Armada. The Valkyrie weaved through the chaos, dodging enemy fire with pinpoint precision. But the closer they got, the more intense the resistance became. The Shark, despite their malfunctions, was still a force to be reckoned with. "Incoming fire," McKenna shouted as the ship lurched violently, energy beams slicing through the void. The shields flickered under the assault, but they held for now. "We need to punch through that blockade," Jim yelled to the pilot. "Get us to their network hub now." The Valkyrie dove and twisted, its guns blazing as it tore into the enemy ranks. Explosions erupted around them, shaking the ship to its core. But through the chaos, the team pressed on, driven by the knowledge that this was their last chance. Enemy fighters closing in, Rogers warned, his fingers flying over the weapons controls. "Hold them off," Jim commanded, his heart racing as they neared their target. The Shark network hub was a massive fortified station at the center of the fleet, bristling with defenses. "Approaching target," the pilot announced, his voice strained with the effort of keeping the ship intact. "McKenna, get ready," Jim ordered. "We only get one shot at this." The Valkyrie plunged into the heart of the enemy fleet, its shields flaring as they absorbed hit after hit. But they had made it. Barely. The network hub loomed ahead, a monstrous structure that pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly light. "Now," Jim shouted, and McKenna slammed her hand down on the console. The virus upload began, a stream of code that would bring the Shark fleet to its knees. But the enemy wasn't going down without a fight. Alarms blared as the hub's defenses activated, turrets swiveling to target the Valkyrie. The ship shuddered under the barrage, its shields failing as energy beams sliced through the hull. "We're not going to make it," Ellis shouted as the ship groaned under the strain. "Keep that upload going," Jim yelled, his voice hoarse with the strain of battle. "We're almost there." The seconds stretched into eternity as the virus spread through the enemy network. Jim could feel the ship tearing itself apart around them, but he refused to give in. They had come too far to fail now. "Upload complete," McKenna cried out, just as a massive explosion rocked the ship. "Get us out of here," Jim roared, and the pilot slammed the controls, the ship lurching away from the network hub as it began to collapse in on itself. The Valkyrie streaked away from the dying enemy station, its engines screaming as it pushed beyond its limits. Behind them, the Shark fleet erupted into chaos as the virus took hold, ships crashing into each other as their systems failed. Jim watched the destruction unfold on the monitors, his breath catching in his throat. They had done it. The Shark fleet was falling apart, their once unstoppable force reduced to scrap. "Mission accomplished," Jim said, his voice filled with a mix of relief and exhaustion. The team slumped back in their seats, the adrenaline finally fading as the realization of their victory set in. They had survived the impossible, and in doing so, they had saved Earth. But the cost had been high, and Jim knew that the fight wasn't over. The Shark might have been defeated, but the galaxy was still a dangerous place. Humanity had proven its strength, but it would need to remain vigilant to ensure its survival. "Let's go home," Jim said quietly, and the Valkyrie turned toward Earth, its battered hull glowing in the light of distant stars. Repercussions of the victory on Earth and the galaxy, and the final steps toward securing peace. The narrative remains focused on the resilience and ingenuity of humanity, showing how even in the face of overwhelming odds, the spirit of human determination can prevail. The upcoming parts will delve deeper into the characters' struggles and triumphs, leading to a conclusion that encapsulates the HFY spirit.